Okay, that's awesome, and it reminds me when in looking back at the previous comment that set up this question, Richard Bandler, he talks about propulsion systems, and it's and this is something I've talked to with a lot of our business clients when getting them funded and getting them through the process of getting startup funding, which is foreign to a lot of people, that you can even get funded as a newfound business without all your financials and without a business plan. But yeah, we do it all the time. And it's this idea of rehearsing success. And this, Richard Bandler called it a propulsion system, as you well know. And this idea that as you move forward and as you rehearse success and as you make progress, it's this idea of what do you do next? What step do I need to take next? And the fact that you take that action, and it's action that is actionable, that remains within your control, you will eventually get to where you're going by forward progress. So that's interesting. I've listened to hours of your interviews and talks, and that's one thing I've really never remember hearing you talk about, but it's something that we talk about a lot with our clients. Do you think that's, in terms of other best practices that business owners can take, what are some other ones relevant to this concept of propulsion systems that you just mentioned?
Well, I mean, if I go back to Richard's work, and I know Richard's work, and I think, I'm a big fan. I think Richard's actually a genius in the field of NLP that he created, and in the field of transformational change. He's really one of the masters. And what he's really talking about there is the idea of building what I call a future memory, right? He calls it future pacing, where you're trying to project out into the future what it is that you want to happen and take a point of view of actually what's it like to think about having the success, right? What I found is, Mark, that when we're working with people, what's more important than thinking about the success is thinking about what happens after you have the success, what I call the outcome of the outcome. And see, we want to do things because we want to have the outcome, right? Whatever that may be. I want to get a date with some girl that I'm interested in. I want to start my business, and I want to generate a certain level of revenue. I want to get a new client, and I have that particular client in mind, whatever it may be. But seldom do we remember to ask the question, why do I want that? What will happen when that happens? And my advice to, again, all of the people who are starting out especially, and this applies actually equally even to mature businesses, is stop being clever. Stop being sophisticated. I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to think about the one thing that will create the most leverage at this moment in time. Now, that one thing is a function of the intersection where the points meet together of the resources you have available, what you can do, what's available to you in this moment, financially, in terms of expertise, knowledge, skills, insight, personnel, equipment, whatever it may be, all the resources that you have collectively, and the opportunity to apply those resources that you have right now. Where's the greatest leverage that's available to you in the moment? So I don't want to go after a market. I don't know how to go after a market. I know how to go after a client. Now, I may define the market to help me focus in and create a funnel to look at where is that client I need to identify, and then I may wind up having a cluster of 10, 20, even 100 different potential clients. And I need to think about, even if I'm doing this virtually, by the way, if I'm doing a purely internet-driven business, I'm going to build an avatar of that ideal client and build my business as though I'm trying to get that one person to be attracted to my offer, that one person to buy into what it is I'm presenting and to become connected to me. If I'm in a business where I'm actually soliciting clients who are real and I'm going to reach out to them, or I'm going to try to get them to, in an inbound way, contact me, I'm going to focus on that one client, that company, that CEO, that CTO, whoever it is that I can identify and really, in my mind, create a rapport with and begin to think, what do they need to hear from me? What do they want to see from me? What has to happen for them to say, I want to do business with Joseph Riggio. I want to make a connection with this guy and have that thing he talks about happen for me. And if people can narrow down to the very specific point of the singular area, the singular thing they can do that has the greatest leverage, that creates propulsion and creates that forward-looking view into this idea of what Richard calls the future, pacing, and I call future memory, and lets you begin to realize, if I can get this person to say yes, what it does for me is all these other things, and that allows me to grow my business incrementally, and eventually, after a few successes like that, it allows me to grow my business exponentially, which is what we're all looking for. We're looking for that moment of transition where scalability happens. And now we're not fighting for the next sale. We're actually dealing with the influx of business we've created because we've set a position in place, and we've become known for that position, and we've become attractive as a result.
Yeah, it's awesome. So in terms of marketing, in terms of specific marketing strategies, I know we were kind of touched on that just before in terms of taking a brand new business in the face of a shifting, transforming marketplace where there's massive amounts of uncertainty. What are some specific marketing mindsets that an entrepreneur and a new startup business can have in addition to what you just said and building upon and expanding upon that going forward? Okay,
now I'm going to get heretical on you. I'm going to be a blasphemer if you don't mind. And that is, the first thing I would recommend everybody does who wants to become successful at marketing is go into their business library and collect all of the marketing books they have and ideally burn them. But if they're not going to burn them, throw them away, give them away. And if you can't bring yourself to do that, get yourself one of those banker boxes from Staples and put all of the books in that box and bring it to the basement and get them out of your sight and out of your mind. Because if you're just starting up, none of that matters to you. What matters is taking action every day to make something happen. So, again, I'm going to go back to my last point, Mark, and say, what can you do? Who is it that you want to make contact with? And how can you identify those people and begin to take action on that point, right? I would refer people back to the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas and who played that? Sheen. What's his name?
Charlie Sheen.
What is it?
Yeah, you got Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. Thank you. Charlie Sheen. Couldn't think of his name. So, Charlie Sheen, he knows if he can get this whale to do business with him, everything else changes. And he puts all of his energy, all of his effort, all of his psychic direction into figuring out what has to happen. And there's that scene where he sends the guy or brings the guy, I can't remember exactly, it's been a long time since I saw the movie, obviously, a box of cigars, which he found out are this guy's favorite box of cigars. And he begins to make inroads. Now, very few people are willing to take the time to make the sacrifice to devote themselves with that kind of clarity, that kind of intensity to getting something to happen, which is really a leverage point for their business. That one client who will introduce you to hundreds of other clients. You want to have somebody who's influential, who's a market maker, if you will, for businesses like the one you're in, right? You want that one interview by that major news source who's going to make you known to all the other people that you need to be in touch with. Whatever it is that you have to do, you have to identify, again, a very small number, 3, maybe 5 actions that you can be taking and putting your attention on for the next 3 to 6 months, and that's all you're going to do. You're going to go after that client. You're going to get news. You're going to be in social media if that's important to you. You're going to meet people and network. Whatever it is you're going to do that's going to generate that momentum in your business, that's what you need to do. You don't need a marketing strategy. You don't need sophisticated planning. You don't need to buy software to manage all of the appointments. You don't need any of that until you have a business. The most important thing is take action today. Now, I'm going to step out of frame for a moment and talk in a space where I'm actually minimally knowledgeable. But because of the work I do with entrepreneurial clients, I've been doing a lot of coaching for many years, and I've consulted with people literally for almost 30 years at this point who are in the position of this startup role. And one of the things that makes a difference is if they have enough funding, whether it's a bank account that they built, or family money, or they borrow money, or they get a line of credit, or they have a client who's doing business with them and generating cash flow, whatever it is, that ability to remove the fear that I have to make it happen today gives them the ability to look a week out, a month out, or 6 months out, which is what it may take to build that momentum before the things that you need to happen really begin to happen. That pressure of having to get that sale tomorrow morning can actually be destructive to a business. And despite, again, what some of the best marketing tomes suggest, if you read them, you need to be able to put your attention on what's really important and not what's most expedient.
Sure, sure. So in terms of, and we glossed on this earlier with the technical difficulties of managing expectations when things don't go right, how can someone take, as an entrepreneur, when we know their first 90 days is going to be glutted with things that don't go right, and of course, obviously, even past the initial 90-day, and you talked about 6 months and even beyond that, what steps can someone take to practically and actually take control of the days and moments when things definitely do not go right?
There's a number of things. I think probably one of the most important things is to recognize you're not in control, right? You, as I said earlier in our conversation, there's everything that's outside of you. The world beyond you is not in your control. And you have to go in knowing that, as opposed to looking for predictability as the foundation of your business. Look for creativity as the foundation of your business. Expect things to not happen the way you expect them to happen. Build an expectation of uncertainty. And build a flexibility, a resiliency to be able to respond in the moment to what comes up. See, I think probably if I had to give you the one trait that for me is the most critical trait, it's this trait of resiliency. To be able to encounter something that turns out very different, wildly different, completely different from what you expected or wanted to happen, and to be able to make the next move anyway, to be able to take action despite the seeming obstacle that you're bumping up against, right? That is really the most critical thing I can think of that you build into a personality. And great entrepreneurs naturally have this. In fact, they see what others perceive as obstacles like opportunities. They recognize that where things are difficult, that's where the greatest opportunities lie, because nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to deal with what doesn't work. But great entrepreneurs look for what's not working so they can put their attention on that thing and figure out how to take an angle on it that lets something happen that others aren't getting to happen, right? And
sure.
So that's part of it, is to really build an expectation of uncertainty. And that's why I say throw away the marketing books. Don't spend endless amounts of hours budgeting. Don't spend endless amounts of hours figuring out the perfect plan. Do not spend 6 months organizing your next 2 years of activity. The world's not going to be that. It's going to be something else, and neither you nor I know what that is.
Sure. And I think running along those lines is this idea of avoiding distortions. It's sort of the other side of the fence of feeling stuck, and it's almost like the distortion itself allows people to be stuck. And we just did an interview with creditpathway.com with Jim Eckley, an attorney on all different funding scams out there. And I saw the interview that you did with Rich Schefrin about, you know, turnkey marketing systems that just automatically and you know, magically put money into your bank account, and it's kind of the same thing here. We have people in the business funding space that are selling these distortions, you know, based upon people's perceptions that something actually exists. So I'll give you a good example. You know, Shelf Corporation funding, that, you know, you can just you can just magically get $500,000 in funding because you buy an expensive aged corporation that's 3 years old, or the CPN funding that you can buy, which is actually fraud and sad that people are buying into it because it's a felony. But you can buy one of these numbers, which is not your own, and avoid the fact that personal credit is the gateway to initially establishing business credit. But can you talk about distortion management? Because as a hallmark throughout your work is this idea of our perceptions being the gateway to our ultimate actions, and you have a really elegant model, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's worthwhile for people to hear you explain it best, as how initial perception leads to ultimate action.
Well, it's a great segue actually, because the model you refer to is what I call getting unstuck, and it's like our central flagship program, if you will. It's where I recommend most people start with us, actually, if we're going to work with them, because it is so fundamental. And you're right. The thing that I was going to say before you introduced the idea of the 4-step model of getting unstuck is really, how do you avoid distortion? What came to mind as you were saying that is you have to know 2 things. Why are you doing what you're doing personally? Why am I in the business I'm in? Why do I do the things with the clients that I do with clients? What's in it for me? Not just the payout, not just that they'll pay me to do it, but on a deeper, more personal level, why am I really doing this? You need and want to know that. And the second thing is, what do you expect that will create? What outcome are you aiming for? So if I walk into that model with that preamble, the first step is really defining an outcome that's worth going for. See, here's a big problem, is that there are many people, entrepreneurs included, who spend a lot of time and energy figuring an outcome out that they're going to go for that they don't really want, right? They may want the result of the outcome. They may want something that's related to the outcome. They may want the acclaim they're going to get if they succeed. They may want to please their wife or their boss or whoever it may be, but they don't really want the outcome for themselves, and they especially don't want to do what it's going to take to create the outcome. Because setting an outcome is one thing. Living with it through the process of making it happen, making it so, is a whole other thing. And people will actually sabotage themselves right at that starting point when they are unwilling to face up to and admit, this is not something I want to do, or this is not something I'm willing to do. Right? So the very first step is having great clarity around why do you want the outcome you're setting out to achieve, and what will it get you? Do you want that thing enough to be willing to do what it's going to take? Now, let's assume that that's true. That's step one. You've defined an outcome that's personally meaningful for you, and you're committed to seeing through. Well, the next thing is, do you know what it takes to produce that outcome? Do you understand the structure of how to create that outcome? What's it going to take to produce it? What has to happen? What are the actions that need to be in place? What's the structure or the infrastructure that you need to be building on so that you can produce the outcome you claim you want? Do you know what it takes? And this is step two, knowing what it takes. The third step is, let's assume again, you've defined an outcome that you want, you're willing and able to commit to it, you know what it's going to take to produce it. Do you know how to do the things you need to do? So let's say that I decide I'm going to be a custom home builder, Mark, and I want to build the best houses in my area at a very high price point. And I'm really excited about that. I'm willing to do what it takes because I love the idea of the income it will produce for me. I like the business and the flexibility. I like working with people. I have an artistic sense of development and what I want those houses to look like visually and the contribution I'll make to the community, blah, 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 blah. I'm all in, right? I'm literally all in, and I'm personally invested. And I know what it takes. I know that a house requires certain considerations. I've got to site it on the property. I've got to build a foundation. I need electrical systems. I need HVAC. I need plumbing. I need structure. I need all those things. I know all the things that go into a house. And now the question that I'm confronting is, that doesn't necessarily mean I know how to do those things. It doesn't necessarily mean I know how to pour a foundation or lay concrete block for the foundation. It doesn't mean I know how to do electrical or plumbing work. It doesn't mean that I can put the frame up and do the carpentry work and put a roof on a house. So there's a difference between what to do and how to do it. But both of these things have to be present. Now the advantage, of course, is I don't have to necessarily know either what or how. So let's say I decide I really want to be a home builder. I can hire an architect. An architect, an engineer, well, they know what to do. They know what pieces go into a house. They even know how to put them on paper, so somebody else who knows how to do those things can follow the design, take the blueprints, and build the house that I've imagined, right? So while these are critical components, the what and the how, and we have to bring them together, I don't necessarily need to be the one who does it. I don't have to reinvent wheels that have already been designed. But I have to understand that those things must be in place. Now, the fourth, and for me the most critical component, is what I call unconscious or hidden limitations. This is where I get in my own way, right? So the classic example, if I stick with my example of being a home builder, is that I now have the home I want to build. I've gone to the architect. I've hired a general contractor. But I want to be in charge. I want to tell them how to do their job, even though I don't know how to do their job, even though I'm not nearly as skillful, but I have a sense that if I give in, I'll be losing my power. If I give in, I'll be seen as less than as important as I want to be, whatever it is. But I'm not really aware of this consciously. I just keep stumbling, and I don't know why I'm stumbling. Well, I have to get to the ability where I can recognize, and this is that distortion thing you were talking about, the perceptual thing. If I recognize that I'm committed, I'm fully invested and all in, I know what to do, or I've got somebody else who knows what to do, I know how to do it, or I have other people who know how to do it, and I keep going around the same circle and failing, then it's not those things. It's something else. 99 out of 100 times, that something else is me. I've gotten in my own way. And I've got to be able to face up to that. I've got to be willing to look it directly in the eye, get out a mirror, steer deeply into it, and say, how are you screwing up the outcome that you intend? And if I can't do that for myself, I've got to find somebody with great skills who can be the mirror for me and help. And this is also going back to that question you asked about how do you deal with uncertainty, is we must have people in our life who we can trust and count on, who are not as emotionally invested in our outcomes as we are, but who are deeply emotionally invested in us. And that's a rare thing to find, but when you do, hang on for all it's worth, man. Hang on.